There comes a moment in life when you realize that not every situation deserves your voice. You begin to understand that constantly explaining yourself is not a sign of clarity, it is often a sign of exhaustion. You try to make people see your intentions, your heart, your truth, but the more you speak, the less they seem to hear. And that is when something inside you shifts. You stop. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that your peace is more valuable than being understood. Many people grow up believing they must justify everything, every decision, every emotion, every boundary. It becomes a habit, almost automatic. You feel the need to explain why you said no, why you walked away, why you changed. But the truth is, those who respect you don't need a detailed explanation, and those who don't respect you will never be satisfied with one. No matter how carefully you choose your words, they will twist them, question them, or ignore them entirely. And in that moment, you realize your words are being wasted. There is a quiet strength in choosing not to respond. It doesn't mean you are weak. It doesn't mean you have lost the argument. In fact, it often means the opposite. It means you have risen above the need to prove yourself. You have stepped out of the endless cycle of defending your worth to people who have already made up their minds about you. And that takes a level of control that most people never reach. When you stop explaining, you also stop giving people access to your inner world. Not everyone deserves to know your reasons, your struggles, or your next move. Silence becomes a boundary. It protects your energy. It keeps your focus where it belongs, on your growth, your goals, your peace. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of arguing, you move forward. And in that stillness, you become harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to control. People may not like this version of you. They may call you distant, cold, or even arrogant. But what they are really reacting to is the loss of control they once had over you. They were used to your explanations, your justifications, your efforts to be understood. Now they are left with nothing but your silence, and that silence forces them to face themselves instead of blaming you. There is also a deeper truth hidden here. When you stop explaining, you start trusting yourself. You no longer need others to validate your choices. You know why you did what you did, and that is enough. That quiet confidence begins to show in everything you do. You walk differently. You speak less, but with more intention. You no longer rush to fill every gap with words. You let your actions speak, and they speak loudly, and slowly, something remarkable happens. Your life becomes lighter. The constant pressure to defend yourself fades away. The noise of other people's opinions loses its grip on you. You begin to experience a kind of peace that cannot be shaken easily. It is not loud or dramatic. It is calm, steady, and deeply rooted. In the end, choosing silence is not about avoiding conflict. It is about choosing yourself. It is about understanding that your energy is limited and you have the right to protect it. You don't need to explain your path to those who were never meant to walk it with you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. There is a quiet frustration that comes from trying to be understood by everyone. You explain your intentions, your choices, your emotions, hoping that if you just say it the right way, they will finally see you clearly. But over time, you begin to notice something unsettling. No matter how carefully you speak, some people remain committed to misunderstanding you. It's not because you failed to explain, it's because they were never truly listening. The desire to be understood is deeply human. It comes from a place of wanting connection, acceptance, and respect. You want others to see your truth and acknowledge it. But this desire can slowly turn into a trap. You start over-explaining, repeating yourself, trying different angles, softer tones, stronger words, anything to make them understand. And in doing so, you lose pieces of your peace little by little. What makes this even more exhausting is realizing that not everyone is willing to meet you halfway. Some people don't want clarity, they want control. They want to keep you in a position where you feel the need to explain yourself, where you constantly seek their approval. Because as long as you are explaining, you are engaging. You are giving them your time, your attention, your energy, and for them, that's enough. There is a powerful shift that happens when you finally accept a simple truth. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Not everyone has earned access to your thoughts, your reasons, your inner world. Some people have already decided who you are in their minds, and no amount of explanation will change that. Once you see this clearly, something inside you begins to settle. You stop chasing understanding from those who are determined to misunderstand. This doesn't mean you become cold or distant with everyone, it means you become selective. You begin to recognize who truly listens and who only pretends to. You notice who respects your words and who uses them against you. And once you see the difference, you naturally start conserving your energy. You speak where it matters and you remain silent where it doesn't. There is also a sense of freedom in letting go of this constant need to be understood. You no longer feel the pressure to explain every decision or justify every move. You start making choices for yourself, not for the approval of others. And that changes everything. Your confidence grows, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, steadily from within. People may question you. They may wonder why you've stopped explaining, why you've become more reserved. Some may even try to provoke you into speaking, into defending yourself like you used to. But you don't respond the same way anymore. You don't feel the urgency to correct every misunderstanding because you've realized that your peace is far more valuable than their approval. And in that realization, you reclaim something important, your energy. Instead of wasting it on endless explanations, you invest it in your growth, your goals, your well-being. You focus on building a life that feels right to you, rather than trying to make it make sense to everyone else. In the end, understanding is not something you can force. It is something that happens naturally between people who are open, willing, and respectful. And when it's not there, no amount of explaining will create it. So you stop trying, you step back, you let people think what they want. Because you finally understand something deeper, being misunderstood is not the worst thing in the world. Losing yourself while trying to be understood is. There is a quiet drain that happens when you feel the need to constantly prove yourself. It doesn't always feel obvious at first. It shows up in small ways, explaining your decisions a little too much, justifying your boundaries, defending your choices even when no one asked. You tell yourself you're just being clear, just making sure people understand. But over time, it becomes something heavier. It becomes a habit of seeking approval without even realizing it. You start to measure your worth through other people's reactions. If they agree with you, you feel validated. If they question you, you feel the urge to explain more, to convince them, to make them see things your way. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to hand over your power. Your confidence becomes dependent on how others respond to you rather than how you feel about yourself. The problem with this pattern is that it never truly ends. No matter how well you explain yourself, there will always be someone who doubts you, misunderstands you, or disagrees with you. If your sense of self depends on changing their minds, you will find yourself stuck in a constant loop, trying harder, saying more, giving more of your energy just to feel accepted, and that loop is exhausting. At some point, you begin to realize that this constant need to justify yourself is not strength. It is a form of insecurity that has been normalized. You were taught in some way that you must earn approval, that your choices need to make sense to everyone, that your boundaries must be explained to be valid. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful than that. You don't need permission to be who you are. The moment you truly understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop over-explaining. You stop rushing to defend every decision. You begin to trust that your choices are enough, even if no one else agrees with them. That trust becomes a quiet kind of confidence, one that doesn't need to be announced or proven. It just exists. When you let go of the need for validation, you also free up an incredible amount of energy. The energy you once spent explaining, defending, and convincing can now be directed towards something meaningful. Your goals, your growth, your peace. Instead of trying to make others understand your path, you focus on walking it with clarity and purpose. This doesn't mean you stop communicating altogether. It means you communicate with intention. You speak when it adds value, not when it's driven by fear of being misunderstood. You explain when it's necessary, not when it's a reflex rooted in doubt. And that difference changes the way people perceive you. Your words carry more weight because they are not scattered. They are chosen carefully. There will still be moments when people question you. They may not understand your decisions, your boundaries, or your direction. But instead of feeling the need to prove yourself, you remain steady. You don't rush to fill the silence with explanations. You allow your actions to speak, and you trust that those who are meant to understand will do so without being convinced. And those who don't, you learn to let them be. Because in the end, your life is not a presentation for others to approve. It is a journey you are meant to live fully, honestly, and unapologetically. When you stop seeking validation, you stop shrinking yourself to fit into other people's expectations. You stand firm in who you are, without the need to explain every step. And that is where real strength begins, not in how well you can convince others, but in how deeply you can trust yourself. There comes a point in life when you realize that saying more does not always make things clearer. In fact, the more you try to explain your limits, your decisions, or your needs, the more room you give others to question them. You think that if you just add a few more words, soften your tone, or provide better reasons, people will finally understand and respect your choices. But often the opposite happens. The more you explain, the more negotiable your boundaries begin to sound. At first, it feels uncomfortable to keep things simple. You're used to giving reasons. You're used to making sure no one feels offended or confused. So when you say a short, firm no without a long explanation, it may feel incomplete, even a little harsh. But what you're really doing is something powerful. You are respecting your own limits without asking for permission. Many people struggle with this because they have been conditioned to believe that boundaries must be justified, that if you can't explain your no well enough, it becomes invalid. So you end up over-explaining, trying to make your refusal sound reasonable, acceptable, even agreeable. And in doing so, you invite negotiation. You give others an opening to challenge you, to push back, to convince you to change your mind. But a true boundary is not a debate, it is a decision. It doesn't require a long speech or a detailed explanation. It requires clarity and consistency. When you say something with confidence, without over-explaining, it carries a different kind of weight. People may not like it, but they understand it. And more importantly, they begin to see that you are not easily swayed. There is also a deeper shift that happens within you. When you stop over-explaining your boundaries, you begin to trust them more. You no longer feel the need to convince others that your limits are valid. You know they are. That quiet certainty becomes your strength. You don't raise your voice, you don't argue, you simply stand firm. Of course, not everyone will respond well to this change. Some people are used to having access to your time, your energy, your flexibility. They are used to you explaining yourself, giving them reasons they can work around. When that stops, they may feel uncomfortable. They may question you, test you, or even try to make you feel guilty. But this is where your growth is tested. Instead of falling back into old patterns, you remain steady. You don't get pulled into long explanations or unnecessary justifications. You repeat your boundary calmly if needed, or you simply step back. Over time, this consistency teaches people how to treat you. It shows them that your limits are not temporary or flexible. They are real. And something else begins to happen. You feel lighter. You are no longer carrying the burden of making everyone understand or agree with you. You are no longer draining yourself trying to make your boundaries sound acceptable. You simply honor them, quietly and confidently. This doesn't mean you become unkind or unapproachable. It means you become clear. You can still be respectful, still be calm, still be thoughtful, but without over-explaining. Your words become fewer but stronger. Your presence becomes calmer but more grounded. In the end, boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about protecting yourself. They are a reflection of what you value, what you need, and what you will no longer tolerate. And when you stop explaining them endlessly, you send a powerful message, not just to others, but to yourself. You show that your limits are not up for discussion. They are simply a part of who you are. There is a strange kind of freedom that comes when you finally accept that not everyone will understand you, and you stop trying to change that. For a long time, you may have carried the weight of other people's opinions, feeling responsible for correcting every misunderstanding, clarifying every rumor, defending every choice. You believed that if people saw the real you, everything would fall into place. But life has a way of teaching you something deeper. Clarity does not guarantee acceptance, and truth does not always change perception. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how honest, careful, or transparent you are. Not because you failed to explain, but because they see the world through their own filters, their experiences, their biases, their expectations. And sometimes they are more comfortable holding on to their version of you than accepting the truth. When you finally see this, it can feel unsettling at first, but hidden within that realization is a powerful release. You begin to understand that you cannot control how others perceive you. You can only control how you live. And once you let go of the need to manage everyone's opinion, you reclaim a part of yourself that was quietly slipping away. You stop adjusting your behavior just to avoid being judged. You stop overthinking every word, every action, every decision. You allow yourself to exist as you are without constantly trying to correct the narrative in someone else's mind. At first, this shift might feel uncomfortable. You might feel the urge to step in, to explain, to defend. Old habits don't disappear overnight, but with time, you learn to pause instead of react. You remind yourself that not every misunderstanding needs your attention. Not every opinion deserves your energy, and slowly that urge begins to fade. There is a quiet strength in allowing people to think what they want while you continue moving forward. You don't argue, you don't chase, you don't try to win them over. You focus on your path. You invest your time and energy into what truly matters, your growth, your peace, your purpose. And as you do, something remarkable happens. Their opinions lose their power over you. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or disconnected. It means you become grounded. You know who you are, and that knowledge becomes your anchor. Whether someone understands you or not no longer shakes your sense of self. You are not defined by their perception. You are defined by your choices, your values, your actions. Some people may drift away when you stop trying to explain yourself. Others may stay but struggle to adjust to this new version of you. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Sometimes letting people misunderstand you is also a way of letting them go. It creates space for those who see you clearly without needing constant explanation. There is also a deep peace that comes with this mindset. The constant noise of trying to manage your image begins to quiet down. You no longer feel the pressure to defend your every move. You live more freely, more honestly. You make decisions based on what feels right to you, not what will be easiest to explain to others. In the end, being misunderstood is not a failure. It is a part of being real in a world that often prefers simple labels over complex truths. When you stop fighting it, you stop exhausting yourself. You accept that your journey is yours alone, and not everyone is meant to understand it. And in that acceptance, you find something far more valuable than approval. You find peace.